All right, Pauline Hanson may well be Australia's most polarising politician, but love her or hate her, she's a woman of conviction. She believes the Greens have hijacked the bushfire debate and says we're losing too many dairy farmers through poor policy. She's also dead against a 2032 Olympic bid for Queensland. I spoke to her just a few minutes ago. Let's talk about some big issues, particularly around the country now. This LNP President Hutchison, he's been embroiled in a controversy over his affiliation with Clive Palmer. Now, he's actually on Clive Palmer's payroll. He's the LNP President. There's a lot of people in the LNP, the Queensland LNP, who are very upset about this. Is it a conflict of interest?
Of course it is a conflict of interest. And I'll tell you, if it was associated with my party, he'd be gone. That's right.
He'd be gone?
Yes, gone. I wouldn't give it a second thought. It's got allegiance,
yep,
okay?
Yep.
He's with the LNP, and if the LNP haven't done it by now, they know he's on Palmer's payroll. Clive Palmer has a registered political party. He intends to stand candidates in the next state election. There's a conflict of interest. He should not be on Palmer's payroll. I would not stand for it. He would have been gone.
Yep. All right, now the dairy industry, I know you've been a massive advocate for the dairy industry, Pauline, but we're still losing dairy farmers. How do we try and stop this happening?
We are. The only way you can really start to make change to it is, I put the bill up twice on the floor of Parliament and I lost it by one vote. It was a draw last time, and being a draw, I still lost it. The Nats have been so bloody-minded about it, will not support my bill, and what it does, it gives a farm gate price for the milk. That means above production costs. So the ACCC will look at all the regions, they will come up with a price for that region. Then the processor will pay the dairy farmer that much money for his milk, so it's above production costs, so it'll be viable for them. Well, they voted that down. Also, part of it was a code of conduct, which I got the code of conduct through. I'm waiting to see what happens. I don't believe it is as good as what it should have been, but Bridget McKenzie was hopeless in this whole situation. And the other thing is to allow the processors, or not allow them to have complete control over the whole industry where they buy their milk from. So that needs to be done, diversification with it from the processors. So I'm going to keep pushing that. That needs to happen. But the dairy farmers are doing it bloody tough. They really are. And we're still losing about one a week. And we're down to, from 1,500 down to 300 in Queensland.
Pauline, you mentioned Bridget McKenzie. She's not travelling real well. What are your thoughts on all this business with the sports rorts affair, as they call it? I'm
not impressed at all about it. I called for her resignation last year, the way she handled the dairy industry, the code of conduct, and I don't think she was forthcoming. I don't believe that she represents everyone equally, and it's come out in what's happened now, the sports affair that's happened. And they say, oh well, she's changed it and she has that right to change it, but an audit was done, it was found that she's done it wrongly. You cannot allow any government, doesn't matter who heads it, to push their own pork barrelling or push their own agenda or looking after themselves. It's not fair on everyone else. And there has to be accountability. I'm all for this, and I'm going to get behind Labor to have a full investigation into this over Bridget McKenzie's handling of this. People are sick and tired of lies, corruption, or whatever politicians get up to and feathering their own nests. People had a gutful of it.
Pauline, you spend a lot of time in the bush. Do you think the Nationals brand is a little bit on the nose in the bush?
It's tainted.
Really?
Oh, definitely. A lot of people now are saying we've walked in a way. We've had enough of the National Party, and the same. Peter, when I got the code of conduct for the sugarcane industry, they had it sitting in their drawer for about 18 months. Barnaby Joyce did absolutely nothing. Anyway, finally, when they were on their knees, they came to me. That's when I actually, on the floor of Parliament, I said, I'm not going to vote on anything till I get this code of conduct. I had it within 5 hours. And it was implemented. Now, you know, the farmers have been able to survive.
Barnaby's been making a few noises lately. Do you think they could ever draft him back?
Look, the way they're travelling at the moment, I think McCormick, nice guy. Do I think he's up to the job? No. If you look at McKenzie, No. Matt Canavan, I've had my issues with him. I don't believe he's dealing with the gas off the northwest shelf. We're exporting about $54 billion worth of gas over there to multinationals. We're only getting about $400 million in tax back from that. They are not putting royalties on it. They're not the PRR tax. It's very hard to explain, but we are actually giving them all these tax credits. So Chevron, ExxonMobil and Shell have got over $300 billion in tax credits. So we're not going to get anything out of our resources, and the government's not pursuing it.
Wow. All right. Vegan eco-vandals, the ones that storm abattoirs, they storm farms. I know there was some legislation that was brought in by the feds late last year, but it's still a concern for the man on the land, isn't it?
They are always going to be concerned about it because you have the rat bags out there pushing their own agenda. We did pass legislation in the Parliament at the end of last year to actually fine them, and it is illegal to trespass on other people's property. I know of farming sectors and people that have been affected by it. They were traumatised by it. And actually one had a cafe on it. They had these little animals that kids used to go up and pat, and you know what, they're so traumatised by it, they actually shut down their whole business, and I think it was about 15 people lost their jobs over it.
It's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary, and this is where we as a society have got to say, hey, enough's enough. We're not going to put up with this rubbish. The same as the rat bags gluing themselves to the streets in Brisbane and shutting down everyone's life.
Well, there's more talk about that in the coming days. All right, now the bushfires have dominated the headlines in recent weeks and months. There's a debate going on, Pauline, about whether climate change is linked to it. But the real issue here for me is why have we stopped allowing farmers, landholders, graziers, the Indigenous, from actually backburning and getting their places in order so that this doesn't happen? And hopefully this Royal Commission, which the Prime Minister's announced, will bring this to light. But surely, you know, as I say, you travel a lot, you're around the country a lot. You would have heard farmers saying, the bloody Greens have stopped us from backburning.
They have. The Greens have put pressure on the Labor Party because they wanted the preferences from the Greens. So they've taken over controls from the grassroots, that's the local government councils. And I've heard people, they said, we've had this house, we wanted to build a house, second house on the property. They refused to let us remove the trees from around the house. And we're talking about bushland. So they have stopped them from doing that. There was stupidity of only 20-metre boundary. And if you've got a boundary fence, you can only, you know, cut about 4 metres from the boundary fence. Well, that's ridiculous as well. We live in a country that is, you know, we know from Dorothy McCullough's poem, you know, floods, fires, bush and drought, that's the country we live in.
Country.
But it's totally different to other countries. When we see the bushfires go through there, they're not as horrendous as what they are here because of the eucalypt tree. And the eucalypt tree actually explodes, and that's why you have these intense bushfires that go through. But also because we have not cleaned the forest floors, we have not allowed back burning. All this has happened. It's built up the fuel over the last, they say, 30 years. That's why it was so intense. Don't blame climate change because it was mismanagement of our land and stopping the farmers from allowing their cattle into national parks to actually eat down the grass and control it. Farmers are great environmentalists if we only let them do their jobs.
Very well said. All right, we're going to finish off with the Olympics. You're not a big fan of the 2032 Olympics for Queensland. Why, Pauline?
The report says from the Oxford University that Olympics will cost approximately about $12.5 billion. Do you think Queensland can afford it? No, we can't. And I travel the state quite extensively, and we've got rural and regional areas. They can't even have hospitals for maternity wards. We can't provide the nurses. The roads are in shocking condition. And most of all, Peter, we haven't got the water infrastructure that we need for the state. You know, for a 2-week sugar hit, we could actually put in the Bradfield scheme, the hybrid Bradfield scheme to water Queensland, but also flow it down to the Murray-Darling for $15 to $20 billion. I know where I want my tax dollars to go, and that's what Queenslanders are saying. Most of the Queenslanders are saying, hey, we don't need this. Let's get our priorities right. And it's all right for Anastasia Palaszczuk or the Prime Minister to say that we'll have it in 2032. be here. So they're going to leave a huge debt to Queenslanders? I don't think so. And was the Commonwealth Games a huge success? I don't think so either. So ask the businesses. They didn't get their clientele across the doors. The locals were angry about it. The games were absolutely opening, closing, were terrible. Shocking. So send the games back to Greece, let it sit up there, because every city, and I got a call from someone in South Korea, they said they built these huge villages. Guess what? They're all deteriorating, left there empty and not being used. We don't need it in Queensland.